you want them to have in relation to your research question? Like, are there certain types of people who embody these things? Situations where those people are going to show up? Is there something else that you'll need to make sense of this? And are there particular kinds of interactions that you want to observe? Interactions between people or between people and things or space? At JUMP we do qualitative research. You know, we don't do quantitative studies. We won't. We don't need to interview 500 people to get a sense of where to go. And part of that is founded on this idea of a cultural consensus model, that the level of agreement between a group of people is going to be based on their competence with respect to a certain domain of knowledge. And I'll give you an example here that it helps you understand people who have shared values. So an example of this is that if you asked people on the street how to play baseball, how's the game of baseball played? Standing on the corner in Palo Alto, you might get people who grew up in 4 different countries. They might play baseball in different ways. Some of them never played baseball. They might not know, right? So you probably get a very wide variety of answers as to what is baseball and how is it played. Ask a team of Little League baseball players how to play baseball, and they're all going to say the same thing, right? Like they're going to say, okay, there's 9 innings. Each inning has, these features. This many people are on the field at a time. There's this many folks on the team. Like they're going to show remarkable consistency in explaining to you how the game works, and that's how you know that you have found a culture, right? That all those folks share something in particular, and once you talk to 3 or 4 kids on a baseball team, you can bet that the rest of the team will answer in the same way, right? Because they are so aligned in their understanding of a certain part of how the world works, right? So this is why, if you want to understand baseball, you don't need to interview 40 people. You could just talk to 10. So around 10 is when you start to hear the same stories over and over and over again. And it could be any domain. You could be understanding, parents with toddlers and asking them about safety concerns in their home. After you talk to 8 moms and dads with 2-year-olds, they're going to start repeating the same kinds of stories over and over again. So this is why qualitative research, you don't have to interview 100 people to get great inspiration and design, solutions that are going to appeal to much more than just those 10 people that you've interviewed. Any questions about this idea of cultural consensus?
So taking the example of you interviewed Bay Area soon-to-be freshmen, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's a pretty targeted group, I would think. I mean, that obviously there's clear parallels between that group, say, a group in the Midwest, or somewhere, or people from a rural town, let's say. But they also are fundamentally probably different. Being growing up in this area is pretty different than. So does that just mean that your inspiration, your target ends up being a little more narrow? Does it mean you want to look at other geographic pockets or get more diversity in another way to sort of come to that consensus? Or?
Yeah. I think it depends on what your goals are and whether your research is meant to inspire design and new service or product development, or whether it's meant to confirm that someone's going to like something or not, right? So in this case, because back to school products are pretty broad, only doing this in one place was going to get us to enough breadth. Knowing, of course, like you're always going to have trade-offs about who to study and where. You never have an unlimited amount of time. You never have an unlimited budget, right? So you're always going to have to make a tough decision, like if I did that study, I would want to go to 2 cities. Like I would want to maybe have one group based in the Bay Area and maybe someone else in Indiana, right? Or Minneapolis, because you might get a different experience there.
So was the goal to draw inspiration to think about creating different product lines?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the inspiration was to understand, well, like, what are the kinds of issues that those young people are facing,
right.
And then what are potential solutions that are going to help deliver on them. So it wasn't like a one-to-one, like, oh, these
right.
people need a kitchen in a box. Like, we didn't know they needed a kitchen in a box. What we knew was that they didn't know what they were supposed to buy, right? And so
so then once you had the kitchen in a box, you would test that with a lot of different groups to make sure that a lot of groups would like it.
You could do that, but like Jump doesn't do that. We're not in that business.
Cause Target might have done
right,
that.
But Target could go and test, and they might say, okay, do we want to charge $24.99 or $30.99? You know, like to the refinement will happen on the back end. But probably even for you guys, if you're developing, you know, a new service or platform that it's not the idea you develop right out of the gate isn't perfect, but it's good enough, right? And so that's what we do. We do the front end of design, and that we leave it to someone else to say what the packaging is going to look like, what the actual product name will be, and that those kinds of things can be refined on a different level. But for you guys to start getting some of the tools for exploring, and that understanding this kind of idea of cultural consensus model is helpful to build a case for why you don't have to go interview 100 people. You could just talk to 10.
Yeah, and you have a limited amount of time, right? And
yeah.
So at the end of the day, you're not coming back and saying, we talked to 5,000 moms and this is
right.
What we got. What she's saying is you can, if you're smart about it, you can spend some quality time with people in some different segments and get to, 98% of that, right?
Yeah, and it would also be a plea for spending more time with fewer people.
Yeah.
So you guys maybe have 2 weeks to go out and do some field research and interviews. That I would rather spend 4 hours each with 10 people than spend an hour each with 40 people, because you'll go deeper, you'll get more rich information, you'll get stories rather than agreement.
I think there's a principle in usability testing that 5 users will give you 80% of the feedback that you need.
Yeah.
Or be representative of 80% of that market.
Mm-hmm. And that's on the same principle.
Are there situations or problems where this wouldn't be recommended, like where the qualitative just wouldn't do?
There's lots of times when quantitative testing, like if you're developing a new drug, testing on 10 people is not a good strategy, right? But if you wanted to, say, redesign an asthma inhaler, maybe going out and doing this kind of research would come up with that design inspiration, or highlight the particular needs of junior high kids who use inhalers. So that might be the set that you go study. But there's definitely, it's good for lots of things, and it's definitely not good for some other things. And also for just like this kind of fine-tuning idea that like, that's not what we do, nor is it what I suggest you spend your time on right now. Like you guys are going out to look for new big ideas. So
I have a question about
Sure.
cultural consensus. So if I see how it's useful, but is it like you identify the different cultures, so to speak, and then go try and sample each of those, or is it you start and then empirically kind of figure out like, oh, these are the groups?
yeah. Let's see. I can't remember if. Okay, so I'll go into a little bit more, but if you have a hunch for your product or service idea, your business idea, like I want to target this at busy moms, you wouldn't go talk to dads, right, or children. You would go talk to moms. So you might develop a couple of parameters on your own that would help you find the kind of folks that you want to target. Like you might have in mind a particular audience for your product or service, right? I mean, I know that this is all talking in abstractions because you guys don't know what you're going to go make yet, but it's helpful if you have in mind an idea of who might want to use it, right? And then you can go test that out, and maybe you want to check in with some other folks too. But you know, folks who work in marketing have a really detailed understanding of their customer base, and so they will do things like segmentation studies that say, okay, there are 5 kinds of people who buy our products. There's, you know, and they'll name the different segments and say, these are the loyalists. They're the people who only buy Brawny paper towels. These are the inventors. They might, you know, be switching out different things. So, like, companies have a really detailed understanding of their current consumers, but if you're coming up with something new, you're just going to have to take a guess about who you think would be interesting to study to help you get that inspiration for what you want to build for them. So how do you define a single culture? This can be challenging. Like you can use explicit commonalities like American teenagers, but you could also then consider what's implicit about them, that like any teenager today who's grown up using a computer, right?